So welcome, we're here to discuss today smart packaging, technology, and reusables. My name is Kevin Missoula. I'm your host for this panel. It's a pretty exciting topic for us. I'm currently the CEO of RM2. That's the company that invented the smart pallet revolution. We did that by taking a little IoT device and putting it in the pallet. And with those sensors, we measure temperature and shock and location. And then we take that up to the cloud, and then we basically turn our pallet into a digital twin so we can provide information to our customers. And I know that our panelists also have a lot of experience in this space. So I'd like to take that opportunity now to introduce the three panelists to you. I'm going to start with Scott. Scott?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really excited about being here today. So I'm Scott Schwabe. I'm CEO of NimbleLink. And NimbleLink, we're really focused on creating devices that go from the edge to the cloud that are battery operated, autonomous, and we really focus on cellular. So if you think about all of the potential technologies out there, there's a lot of great ones we're going to hopefully talk about and touch today. And our focus is really working on the reusable transports that move in and out of factories and buildings that don't have an infrastructure. So it's an exciting topic, and looking forward to sharing some experiences.
That's great. So NimbleLink, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't Nimble Inc., that tattoo parlor down in Minneapolis.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, so no connection.
All right, great. Kevin, give us a quick intro.
Good morning or good afternoon, whenever you guys are seeing this. My name is Kevin Davidson. I am the Business Development Manager here at Logistomatics. Logistomatics is a GPS tracking company in Greensboro, North Carolina. And GPS tracking, obviously been around for quite some time. One of the things that we've kind of seen over the past couple of years, we've seen an acceleration in the use of these devices to manage reusable packaging in large supply chains. So we provide a total solution, both hardware and software, that allows packaging engineers, logistics managers, and brand protection to track the location and the flow of the containers when they're outside of the plant, which is what we have learned is where the bulk of the problems are happening with theft, missed ships, cross-docking. And so our solutions give visibility from where they're supposed to be when they leave the plant.
Cool. So you're mainly tracking containers or different types of things?
Golly, I mean, we track everything, but mainly in this world, with RPA, typically containers and metal racks, but yeah, the bulk containers.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for that. Sean.
Hi, my name is Sean Stockman. I am the Director of Business Solutions for OnePack. OnePack is a platform company. We provide an online platform for our clients to manage and track reverse logistics and loop logistics. And in terms of reusable packaging, we use an IoT technology for tracking where either assets are, or reusable assets, or even pallets as part of either an asset recovery program or a supply chain loop. So we provide the platform where, and we can also provide the devices to go in the crates, totes, bins, steel reels, all kinds of things. And then we also provide the logistics. So we're both a data services provider and a logistics provider, which is a little unique in this space.
And you also headed up a working group for the RPA, right, on smart technologies?
Yeah, we have a committee for operations and logistics. And last year we did a white paper on smart technologies for reusable packaging, which you can find on reusables.org. And I happen to be the chair when we put that white paper together, and that's sort of the starting point for a lot of these kinds of conversations.
Well, we look forward to gaining your expertise from that. All right, well, let's turn to some of a couple questions for you guys to get some of your insights. So, technology, smart packaging, reusables is a huge field, and you would think that when you put in the technology with the reusable notion, that's going to create a lot of opportunities. What do you guys think are what do you think about the current trends and the current capabilities, the most exciting opportunities that are out there when you're combining the technology with reusable systems? Why don't I start with you, Kev?
Well, yeah, I think the spread of IoT devices and cloud computing kind of laid the foundation for the technology platform. I think the exciting additions to that platform is in the area of the low-cost sensors, indoor technology, indoor location technology, and data visualization tools that are going to help manage the thousands to tens, hundreds of thousands of these containers. I think what I'm most excited about is actually on the data and reporting side. You know, everybody wants all the data, but what are they doing with it, right? So we've been able to kind of get away from the find the needle in the haystack mentality and have adopted a strategy of managing by exception, which provides someone that does have potentially thousands of these devices on their containers a very easy and simple way to know and then predict potential problems in their supply chain. So, you know, nobody wants to pull up a platform and see 5,000 dots on a map. All they really kind of care about is the ones that are problematic or aren't where they're supposed to be. So,
Right, that sounds great. Scott?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's an area of excitement right now with where the technology is going and how we're actually able to use it within this reusable packaging world. We're getting lower power connectivity, we're longer battery life, we're getting more rugged things. And as I mentioned, you know, our focus is really on cellular, but as I see all the other technologies around with the low power wide area networks being able to communicate, it's very exciting to see what we can do to think about that. You can put a tracker on a reusable container and literally know where it is in the globe at any one time and have the confidence that the units with the batteries are going to last for a long time, you know, 2, 3, up to 10 years in some cases, where you can reuse it and reuse it and reuse it and get a really good return on investment. Because in the past, it was just even 2 years ago, it was hard to meet some of these requirements. So
I guess if the battery lasts, you know, longer, like 5 or 10 years, then you can amortize that module or that tracking device over that period of time and maybe put more feature or enrich the features that are in it then.
That's right. If you have a reusable transport container that's going to last 3 to 5 years, it doesn't make sense to have to go and replace the intelligence tracking devices on that, and so you can actually make them last for that long, and you know, the upfront cost of the hardware now gets amortized over that period of time and becomes very null at some point.
Sounds great. Sean, you want to chime in? You're on mute, I think, Sean.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So 2 things really. One is how many more options there are out there now as far as devices and technologies, and it makes it a little more difficult to make a decision if you're looking to implement that technology, but it does also increase competition, which should drive costs down and make that a real benefit going forward. To me, the exciting part is to add the accountability that has been a little bit lacking. And I'm thinking of, you know, in terms of, let's say a driver is going on a route, they could be delivering cannabis, or it could be going to pharmacies or whatever, and he's got reusable crates or totes on there. And traditionally, they might have an app with a list of what you're supposed to drop off at each location, and they might scan a QR code on that tote, drop it off, and move on. You don't really know if physically that person has left that tote behind, or whether they drove the whole truckload to their brother-in-law and they're going to sell it on the internet. So now, right, with these tracking devices, as soon as it hits the geo fence, you know exactly what time it was physically left there, and there's just a lot more accountability and therefore security in tracking the contents of what's in these reusable packaging. So to me, you know, removing some of the human chance for error and increasing the physical accountability of the whereabouts of these assets in real time is pretty huge. And so I think as this gets more out there, that's going to be a big benefit to all the companies that are using that kind of technology. So that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I want to add in that to me, the part that you spoke about, Sean, is really tangible. You can really get your hands on it, and going to open up more blue sky. I mean, when I look at the food chain from farm to plate, everybody talks about there being a waste of 25 to 35%, along that chain, and we don't know what we don't know. But now with sensors and communication technologies, we can start to know where some of that happens, and if we can gain a day of shelf life or product life, along the way, that helps, economically, but it also helps environmentally also, because all that food that doesn't make it to the plate has to go somewhere and disintegrate and cause gases. So it could really be helpful to the world when we start to find solutions where we know better things and we're able to be more efficient, along the way.
Yeah, I made a comment to somebody the other day that, we can solve world hunger with this technology, and they kind of chuckled a little bit. But in reality, as you just mentioned, a 25% waste, there's enough food in the world right now. If we just need to get it at the right place at the right time for the right people. And this is what, the mission of that we can accomplish with the technology and the reusable space here.
Yeah, those types of things where you talk about, solving global issues are real. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the smart metering space, and our grid is set up for maximum usage, which happens once a day, once a year. And if you're able to spread that curve out, from the integration of how much energy you're using, the peak time versus the lower time, save more in the lower and use less in the higher, it really affects demand worldwide. So similar types of things can happen on the food chain. Kevin, I think I cut you off.
No. I was just agreeing. It was a good point.
All right, great. Well, let's, as you can see from this presentation, we're all kind of remote. We're all, locked down in our situations. COVID time, it's changed the world. That's caused a lot of massive havoc for most of the world, but it's also going to, undoubtedly creating opportunities for others. So I just want to get your take on this COVID issue and how technology and reusables are coming together. Are there opportunities that make more sense in this crazy time that we're living in? Scott?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think initially everybody was just kind of stepping back and just kind of hunkering down, and there really wasn't. They were taking it, just using what they had and trying to. But as we look going forward, COVID does not seem to be going away, and once COVID's gone, we're probably going to have something coming. And so I'm talking to the customers and partners that are really starting to think about what can we do to a couple things. When things are arriving at a factory or things are arriving and they're moving around at a warehouse, just knowing what's coming, where it's been, the traceability allows the workers to prepare for that and allows that to happen. And it's more, people are talking about sensors that could potentially be put onto packages to know what kind of environment they were in. And I also see, the whole Internet of Things outside of reusable being really used to check temperatures and doing stuff like that. Also, but very specific to this market. I think you're going to see, as long as this continues, there's going to be technology advancements and getting the market just at the right time. I think pharmaceuticals obviously are going to be important. They talk about these vaccines are going to be distributed. Well, how are they going to get to the right place, and how are we going to make sure they're there? This type of technology is going to be critical for accountability and to make sure it's there when it's supposed to be.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely brought, a whole new set of challenges that businesses are dealing with. One that was felt immediately was, when people started working from home, like overnight. You got folks who used to have their eyes on the supply chain, on these containers, and
right.
and now they're doing their jobs, in their living room while their kids are doing cartwheels behind them on a Zoom call. Like, any time that you have assets or containers or anything, out there that's really not supervised, then they have the propensity to grow legs and walk away, as we all know. for our customers that track, returnable packaging, COVID has definitely made the normal methods of in-person auditing difficult. So they've had to rely much heavier on the technology and the platform with the trackers and software. And as people did come back to the marketplace, sometimes what I've heard from our customers too is like, there are a lot of times new drivers that aren't as familiar with that aspect, with handling and caring for pallets and containers. So when they come back, there's more damage that we've kind of seen too. So but I agree. I mean, it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, good examples. Good examples. I'm thinking more on the hygiene aspect. I mean, a lot of times, the companies will measure, big batches or lots because that's all you could measure, right? But if sensors, as you mentioned, are coming down in cost, and we can put one on every unit of that we want to put it on, be it a box or be it on a crate or on a pallet, now we can know when that individual crate was washed, and make sure that it was washed. It wasn't that, we washed 100 pallets, but I don't know if that was pallets 1 through 100 or 7, 15, and 360, right? But now you can know that the individual container that was there was washed, and when it was washed, and that it's going to go down a route that's a hygienic route. So I think the lower cost of sensors and the ability to communicate, at a much more finite level of analysis is going to be very helpful, both to food and to pharmaceuticals and many other industries as well.
Yeah, I'd just like to throw in, there's right now a shortage of drivers in the logistics industry, and the turnover rate is high. So there's a lot of untrained drivers out there. We struggle with that constantly, trying to make sure that we can get freight from A to B on time. But Scott's example of when the vaccine finally gets out and ready to be distributed, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny over who's handling that. Are they trained? Are they reliable? Was there a background check? And so you've got some inexperienced drivers hauling around, potentially millions of dollars worth of vaccine that may have a life on the black market, may be a target for organized crime. There's a whole bunch of security issues that brings up, that the ability to track on a case-by-case basis, I mean, literally a physical case. Let's say, RM2 has these pallets with a tracking device. You can add a sensor for every box on that pallet that's Bluetooth connected, so when that box or case of, let's say, vaccine leaves the pallet. That's going to be really important, as we go through. And you've got to track on a very small unit level where this stuff actually got distributed, by whom, and when. And so I think that whole, and I hate to harp on the accountability issue, but as the value of the stuff that they're delivering is increasing, and especially something as critical as that accountability and trackability is pretty huge.
Wow, that's a really good example. Yeah, I saw that I've been watching a few COVID movies, or Contagion and some others, and that exact issue came up where people were killing for the vaccines, right? So I can see how different things will rise in value at different points in time. So super example. Well, let's turn to the topic of turning data into value. I mean, I heard a little bit earlier of that, dots on a map aren't of much value, but having a lot of sensors means we're going to have a lot of data, and we're going to know a lot of things that we didn't know before. But how do we manage all that so it's just not data overload, and we actually can turn it into insights, into some actionable information that we can use? Do you guys have an example that you can share with us on how that's possible?
Yeah, I got actually one that just happened to me last week. I was speaking with somebody in the automotive OEM space who had several of his containers were supposed to go from him to a supplier, get filled and come right back. Instead, he's showing me they go to another place for 8 days, and they weren't supposed to. So the process starts with really understanding the loop. which, what's an acceptable, time for it, what's acceptable dwell time for, a container at a certain place, which candidly, many people don't know at first because they haven't tracked, they just don't know. And then taking that data and to be alerted if something is unacceptable or not good, the concrete results for this customer is that knowing that these containers, this lot of containers went somewhere else for 8 days, what that means for him is, he's like, Kevin, I'm spending $40,000 a month on expendables because we don't have these things where they're supposed to be. So, that happens all the time. I think what's cool and kind of even what Sean was kind of touching on a few minutes ago is that at some point there's going to be cost is going to come into this. Yes, the prices on the technology is going to continue to come down, but what we've seen too is that at times you only have to track a small percentage of your containers to begin to understand what's happening. The biggest value add isn't that you don't have to keep buying replacement containers. It's the fact that a healthy supply chain is a profitable supply chain. So anytime you have to pause or hit that button that stops the line, that's costing tens of thousands of dollars every minute. So I think the biggest value add here is just the impact that it's going to have on a company's bottom line.
Yeah, it's really, really good. You want to comment on that, Sean or Scott?
Yeah, I was just going to give you a similar example where we had a client who had a loop that their crates were going through Mexico, their own plant in Mexico, and process was being done and parts were putting back in there, and they're coming back across the border, and they were trying to figure out why it was taking so long. And so we did a pilot with them, and first we discovered that they were sitting in customs for weeks, like 3 weeks in customs. They didn't realize that. And then similarly, we were looking, you talk about dots on a map, we were looking at the breadcrumb trail of where these crates had been in Mexico. And so, we noticed that from the plant, there was this 60-mile loop over a few days that they were making. And I said, so what process is that? And he said, we don't have any process outside that plant. They should never leave the plant. So after some investigation, they realized that there was an employee that had been having a little side business on the side of renting out the company crates, and they were making a very predictable loop, like 60 miles over 3 or 4 days, and he was making a nice little living on the side using the company's crates. And so, being able to narrow it down to that kind of forensic analysis of what's going on with our assets, or these reusable assets, means that you can really tweak a process, whether it's uncovering, in this case, an employee doing the wrong thing, or just a silly, physical process in a plant where things are getting shuffled off to the side and left for days when they really should be next to the production line, or that kind of very finite level of tracking, where if you've put a lean manufacturing process in place, and that means, reducing the distance between the crates full of raw materials to the production line, you realize that for some reason they're being stored in the warehouse across the street and it takes a day to get there. There's a lot of production issues that can be uncovered just by that. And if you've got a warehouse, we had one customer with 1 million square feet in one warehouse, and they kept losing stuff in their own warehouse. And it was just because they didn't remember where they put this thing they only use 3 or 4 times a year, and they'd waste 2 or 3 days looking for this thing. It's the size of a car, but they only use it every quarter, and they didn't have any way of keeping track where it was. So, it sounds silly, but these are huge gains in production just by being able to get the stuff that you need when you need it, where you need it. So
yeah, no, I want to build on that, because there's, from engineering that I was trained in, they say you need to provide a decent feedback loop, and if you can provide good feedback, you can fix what was happening, or you can make things better. So, a couple of years ago when we started with this smart pallet, we sent 20 to a customer. They prototype models say you're going to take care of these and you're just going to use them inside your plant, right? And they said, yeah, don't worry, we've got complete control over everything. I said, okay, well, here's the 20. And then the first day, it said, you've only got like 15 of them left. I said, no way. He said, yeah, I know where the other 5 are, but they left the door. And they said, how is that possible? It happens all the time. So, but we're able to give, very specific and precise feedback. It happened at 8:07 in the morning from Dock 5, right? Who was working on that shift, and can you give them feedback, right? That, these things aren't supposed to leave anymore. So you can find a corrective loop. And then also psychologically, I think people will treat things differently if they know they're being measured. I mean, I used to drive a bit faster on the highway, but now that I know that they've got the speed cameras, I drive a bit slower. So you can actually affect people's behavior once they know that measurement is happening.
You mentioned affecting behavior. I think it's interesting verbiage. We've seen that too. Like when the folks that we have tracking, here's what we've seen in addition to just being able to kind of know and see the visibility and be able to manage and monitor that is, first of all, we haven't said it yet, but theft is a huge problem in this. Out there, it's huge. What we've seen is that
container.
like we were talking about yesterday, it's like, if it's empty, nobody really sees it as valuable. It's like a pizza box, like you got the pizza, just throw the thing away. Well, that pizza box costs $800. Like, and there's a small percentage of people that know the value of that. But as far as affecting behavior, like over time, when people have gotten caught, they will begin to kind of leave that brand alone. They'll walk past that container because, they know the last time that happened, they got caught, and they'll pick another one. So it's interesting that affecting behavior. That's just another way that kind of shows through.
Right. Well, let's move to our last question, because there's obviously a ton of benefit, but there's also a lot of different use cases and different ways to use the technology. And I think a few of you mentioned that, with a lot of different options out there, it may be difficult to get started, and there may be too many jams to choose from. But there must be some common themes and some ways to make a roadmap to get started. Do you have any suggestions for people on how to get started and start to benefit from some of these technologies?
This is Scott. Maybe I can just jump in and get it kicked off. We're seeing that exactly as you walk into, if you think about the companies we're talking to and working with, this isn't their core. This isn't what they're thinking about on a day-to-day basis. They're building something, they're manufacturing something, they're trying to get it out the door, and then we expect them to be IoT experts, so coming in and being able to ask some real basic business questions, understanding what the pain points are, what are is the line being shut down because you don't have enough reusable containers? Is there somebody in the organization thinking that they're spending way too much? Because they most likely have 30% more containers than they really need because they're not where they're supposed to be. Trying to understand and just stepping back and understanding the business problem that we want to solve, and then we can come in and not get caught up on the technology, because
right.
if we don't have a business problem to solve, no technology is going to solve that, no data is going to solve that. But if we understand what it is and take the time to ask the question, so my recommendations when I'm working with especially somebody new that's in the space is just really, what is the main pain point that we're trying to solve here? And I think, don't try to solve all the issues at one time. Let's figure out what's the main one, solve that, and work on that. Because you get the opposite side of that, where somebody's been engaged and they want to track everything and they want all this data, but they have no idea how they're going to use it and what they're going to do with it. So I think Sean had mentioned that earlier. How do we help the customer through the process and to get a couple units? And I think Kevin, you had mentioned a proof of concept where somebody had 20 units and it just was eye-opening to them what happened to just those 20 units. So don't think about 1 million today. We'll get there. Let's get the first couple and start with the right steps, and quickly make decisions on what you're going to do with the data, and work through just a regular project management process that you would with any other new technology or process in your factory or your automation. Think about it kind of the same way.
Yeah, I mean,
start a little, learn a lot, and then do a lot, right? I mean, those are great things. And when you think about people's pain points, there are. I mean, theft is obviously one. I mean, it could be reducing risk. It could be improving throughput. In terms of having things on the line better. It could be conformance with regulations. Some of those though are super important, but how do you measure them, and how do you get somebody to pay for the solution when they're not exactly sure on how much they're spending now or their costs? I mean, there's some difficult questions to answer there. I mean, we've struggled with some of that on getting people. There's a lot of different buckets across companies that are measured in silos that you need to bring people together to understand how all the costs work together, and it does take a business case to pull that together.
The more information you can get on the front end, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. It's not just about replacing containers. It's how does it affect the company? What does it mean? And I'll answer that. Okay, what does that mean? How does that impact the next thing? And it all comes down to dollars, right? So it's being able to find out at the end of the day, is there an ROI? And in most cases there is. You just have to find it. Maybe it's not on tracking 100% of anything, but you'd think that returnables or reusables would be easy. I mean, it should be a slam dunk, right? I mean, everybody wants to go green. It's tough for people to stay green, if they keep having to replace them. If returnables are a little bit higher initial investment, and if they keep getting lost or stolen, then maybe the desire to do the right thing for the environment or the world starts to give way to finding a cheaper solution. And well, there's cardboard.
Right. Yeah, good point.
And also it's just different technologies. So there's been times I've been excited about a phone call coming in, and I'll find out that they're wanting one thing, and I'm like, oh, that's not me. I mean, if you're trying to track inventory, internally, then that's probably going to be like an RFID solution, not GPS. If you're having problems with theft, lost dwell time, misships within a supply chain, within a loop, yeah, then that's GPS is the answer. So it's also trying to do the right thing by the customer and saying, yeah, I don't think what you're wanting to do is solvable by this. And sometimes, frankly, they don't really know what they want. They might think that they do, but what they're looking for is different.
Sounds good, Kevin.
One thought is around helping people figure out where to start looking for a solution. And even on this panel, we have different parts of this represented, where NimbleLink is a device manufacturer. Kevin's company is Logistomatics is more of a reseller of other people's devices, right? And they integrate into a platform. We are also kind of a platform. Is that right, Kevin?
It's more of a, no, we're a service and software company. Like the bread and butter of what we do is in our platform.
So, but
we do sell devices, yes, but like
as a reseller though, I guess for I think a lot of what we hear is confusion around not knowing what kind of company someone's talking to, because it's tricky to know is this your device or are you reselling somebody else's device? Yeah. Are you providing the platform or do I have to? And so, for me, if you look at all the pieces of a solution, you have the device itself, you have the data that it's producing, and you need a way to access that data online in a visual way, a UI, a user interface that is workable and you can do something with that data. And there's a carrier involved like AT&T or Qualcomm or someone like that. And then is that data actionable? Can you do anything with it once you figure out what you're looking at? And so, there's a wide range of companies out there where manufacturers often say, the device manufacturers sometimes just say, we have this great device. It's up to you to figure out what carrier we'll tell you what carriers it'll work on, but you got to go get the data plan. And then, once you get that, you got to figure out what you're going to do with the data. Sometimes you have to build your own interface to like an API interface to pull that data in and then present it in your own ERP system or whatever system.
Right.
All the way over to there are companies, including ours, that, you don't have to think about all that at all. And where it's like, here's my problem. And it's like, all right, so we're going to hook you up with this device. We'll provide the platform that you log into. But we're not going to tell you, we're not a device company. I mean, we're not going to tell you we make it.
Yeah.
We'll help you choose the right device according to what you really need. Maybe you don't need humidity and temperature and all that. Maybe you only need vibration and shock and, the GPS kind of thing. It's like, you don't need the world. Maybe you only need this. And so the trick for a buyer, of someone who's trying to solve a problem, is, looking at a half dozen companies, you're going to get a range of suggestions and a range of how much sweat equity you're going to have to put into it. Like, it's great to get a great device and the data, but if you don't also have a platform to log into, then you got to have some developers on staff who can take that data, build a user interface, or somehow plug it into your system.
Yeah.
So I think, sort of a buyer beware of, just make sure you know who you're talking to and how much of this they can provide. And,
well, at the end of the day, we're talking about a black plastic box with wires in it, So you're absolutely right, Sean, in that it does come down to, what do you need to see? And can we customize something in a way that allows for that? And then can our platform, or if you have your own, we'll give you an API key and you can do with it what you want, but you're kind of spot on. So it comes down to listening to the customer, because I think as we're talking, I'm thinking, golly, it must stink to be a customer, because it must be hard to be a customer, because if they don't know, they're talking to 6 companies, they may say all the same thing. I don't know who to go with,
Well, it's not even that they're saying the same thing. Is they might be giving you here's X hours per month. The question is, what are we getting for that? Is that the whole shebang? I mean, are we getting the device and the data plan and a platform for that amount, or are we just getting part of that? And that's where I think the tricky part is to really understand what you're getting for, what is the value, how much of it do I have to do myself versus rely on the vendor to do. And there are lots of different models out there. Like, I have to buy the devices up front and then do a monthly plan to a data provider or a platform provider, or I'm buying it from a reseller who can bundle it all together into one flat, so there's no CapEx expense, it's all OpEx, a monthly fee, easy peasy, just make sure that what you're getting for that monthly fee is everything you really need, without having to have a whole other team come in and supplement that.
And the easier you can make it on them, the easier it is for them to decide. Yeah.
Sure.
All right,
Yeah,
well,
we'll never scale.
Super exciting field. You want to add something there?
I was just going to say, we'll never scale if we don't make it easy. And so that's really what we have to do.
Very good. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So we're getting toward the end of our allotted time. How about final comments from you guys in terms of, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I've learned, a super amount from you guys. So thanks very much for your time. I open up for any final comments from you on the topic.
I'd just like to throw out there that the Reusable Packaging Association is a great resource to start with. And if you go to the marketplace on reusables.org, you can find these companies and others that provide a range of services there. And there's also white papers and some resources just to educate yourself about how to be a smart buyer of these kinds of services.
Go Reusables.
Yeah, I think just words of advice is that if you are not familiar and you haven't taken the first step to use reusables and to use the technology, now's the perfect time. I mean, your competitors are doing it. There's others doing it. So I think it's and Sean had mentioned there's a lot of different companies and providers out there. But just get started. Reach out to somebody and get started, because the technology's there, the smart containers are there. The opportunity to get this ROI is here today. It's not something that we're talking about, that we're we're hoping that it's going to be here in 12 months. It's here. It's we're able to provide this now, and so I think it's important to start those conversations.
Yeah, and then I guess finally, I think that one thing I would encourage you guys to do, one thing I've seen probably in the last 9 to 12 months, and I think it is directly related to COVID, is just that people are a lot more collaborative than they were maybe a year or two ago with regards to, one business would find something that worked and kind of hold it close to, their chest. And now it's like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all struggling. This is a crazy time in the world. It's a crazy time in business. And I've found that this works for me, so just ask. I mean, I think that people will be a lot more kinder in that regard than they maybe have been in the past.
Yeah, my comment would be that, as Scott said, the easier we make it. I mean, a lot of these things, the adoption of a lot of these technologies, which we say are already here and available, it takes time, right? The first container was kind of in the 50s. Airbnb and Uber are like 20 years old now, believe it or not. I mean, these things don't happen overnight. I mean, they finally get to a point where they accelerate, but the technology has been there for a while, and the adoption just takes a while. So my last point would be that people need to think through, change process and adoption. And as they go through that, then they can start to make use of the technology that's already available. Well, I really enjoyed it. So thanks, Sean, Scott, Kev. Really appreciate your time, and I hope that your businesses are super successful and you're able to continue to bring technology to bear and make reusables reused and save the world. So good for you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Likewise.